The night was quiet, too quiet. The man sat alone in his small wooden cabin, the fire crackling in the old stone fireplace. His dog, a big loyal shepherd, lay near his feet, ears twitching every time the wind howled against the walls. Outside, snow covered everything in a heavy white blanket. The trees bent under the weight, their branches creaking in the cold. The man pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders and took a slow breath. Nights like this were long and lonely, but at least he was not completely alone. His dog was always there, watching, listening. Then it happened. A sound. It was faint at first, almost like a whimper carried on the wind. The man frowned and sat up straight. His dog lifted its head at the same time, ears sharp, nose sniffing the air. The sound came again, a broken cry, soft but strange. Not the cry of a baby, not the call of an animal. Something different, something he had never heard before. The man's heart beat faster. He listened harder, holding his breath, but the sound faded. He almost thought he had imagined it until his dog growled low and deep in its throat. That growl meant only one thing: danger. The dog stood up, fur bristling, and faced the door. The man followed its gaze. The sound came again, clearer this time. A thin voice, weak, almost like someone crying in pain. It came from the woods beyond the cabin. The man swallowed hard. He knew the forest well. He had lived near it for years. He knew the cries of foxes, the screams of owls, the calls of wolves. But this sound did not belong to any of them. It was too human, yet not human. Too fragile, too strange. The dog barked once, sharp and loud, then ran to the door, scratching at it. The man hesitated. The night was freezing, and the storm was growing stronger. Going out there would be dangerous. But he could not ignore the sound. Something or someone was out there, suffering. He grabbed his heavy coat, pulled it on, and took his flashlight from the table. With a nod to the dog, he opened the door. The cold hit him at once, sharp as knives against his skin. Snow swirled around his boots, and the dark forest loomed ahead like a wall of shadows. His flashlight beam cut through the night, but only barely. The dog pushed ahead, nose to the ground, leading the way. The sound came again, louder now. A broken cry filled with fear. The man's chest tightened. He followed quickly, his boots crunching in the snow. The forest was silent except for the cry. No birds, no rustling animals. Only the sound of something fragile, something lost. Hello? He called, his voice uncertain. It felt foolish talking to the darkness, but he could not stop himself. Is someone there? No answer. Only another cry. The dog barked again, then dashed forward into the trees. The man cursed under his breath and ran after him. Branches whipped against his coat, snow fell heavy on his shoulders, but he kept going. The sound grew clearer with each step. It was close now, very close. Then he saw it. At first, he thought it was a small child curled in the snow. But as his flashlight beam fell across the figure, his breath caught in his throat. It was not a human child. Its skin was pale blue, almost glowing under the light. Its body was thin, trembling, wrapped in nothing but a torn piece of cloth. Large eyes stared back at him, eyes too big, too bright. The creature's lips moved, and a weak sound came out, almost like a whisper, almost like begging. The man froze. His dog stopped too, standing between him and the creature, tail stiff, ears flat. But the dog did not bark. Instead, it gave a small whine, like it understood the pain of the strange child. The man's mind raced. He had seen strange things before: wild animals, lost hikers, shadows that made his heart jump, but nothing like this. This was not human. This was not from here, and yet it was small, helpless, freezing to death in the snow. The child's thin arms reached toward him. Its lips moved again, forming sounds he could not understand. But the fear and weakness in its voice were clear. The man felt his breath quicken. His hands shook as he lowered the flashlight. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to get away from this thing, whatever it was. But another voice inside whispered something else. If he left it here, it would die. The dog looked at him, eyes shining, waiting for his choice. The man took one slow step closer, his boots sinking in the snow. The child's eyes widened, glowing faintly in the darkness. Its shivering grew worse, its body curling tighter. The man's coat felt heavy on his shoulders. Slowly, he pulled it off. He knelt down, heart pounding, and wrapped the coat around the small, freezing figure. The child gasped, its body jerking at the sudden warmth. Then, slowly, its glowing eyes blinked, and its tiny hands clutched the fabric like it was life itself. The man lifted his head and looked around the forest. The trees stood silent, but he could not shake the feeling that something was watching. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Somewhere deep in the woods, another sound stirred. A sound not of weakness, but of power. He tightened his grip on the child, his dog growling softly at his side. The night had changed, and he knew nothing would ever be the same again. The man stood frozen in the middle of the forest, his coat wrapped around the strange little figure. Snowflakes drifted down like ashes, settling on the child's pale blue skin. The dog pressed close to his leg, not barking now, only watching with sharp, alert eyes. The forest was silent, too silent, as if every living thing had gone into hiding. The child trembled inside the coat, its teeth chattering softly. It looked small, too small, like it should not be alone in a place like this. Its large glowing eyes blinked slowly, heavy with exhaustion. The man crouched lower, his breath making little clouds in the air, and tried to study its face. It looked fragile, but there was something otherworldly about it. The smoothness of its skin, the faint glow, the way its fingers curled as if they did not quite belong to this world. He felt the weight of the decision pressing on him. He had two choices: leave it here and pretend none of this was real, or take it back with him. His stomach twisted. He had lived alone for years, avoiding trouble, keeping his world small and simple. But now trouble had found him, in the form of a freezing alien child lying helpless in the snow. The child's lips moved. A faint sound escaped, weak and broken, like a whisper. The man leaned closer. The words were not English, not any language he knew. Strange syllables spilled from its mouth, soft and trembling. Yet even without understanding, he could hear fear in the voice. Fear and pleading. His chest tightened. He did not know why, but leaving it behind suddenly felt impossible. The dog whined, stepping closer to the child, nose twitching. Instead of showing fear, the child reached out a thin hand and touched the dog's fur. The dog flinched at first, then stilled, ears flattening. A moment later, the dog pressed its head gently against the child's hand. The man blinked in shock. His dog trusted no one, not strangers, not travelers, not even children from the nearest town. Yet here it was, softening for this fragile creature that decided it. The man slipped his arms under the small body. It was shockingly light, almost weightless, as though made of glass and air. The child gasped faintly, curling closer into the warmth of his chest. He pulled the coat tighter around it, holding it close. But as he stood, a sound in the distance made his blood run cold. It was faint, but clear. A low hum, rising and falling, mechanical, yet alive. It echoed through the trees, carried by the wind. The dog stiffened, ears forward, growling softly. The man froze in place. His eyes swept the darkness between the trees, heart hammering. The child's eyes widened suddenly. Its body tensed. Its lips moved again, whispering broken words in that strange language. Then, in a voice barely louder than the wind, it spoke one word he could understand: coming. The man's throat went dry. Coming. Who was coming? What kind of thing hunted in the woods on a night like this? He turned, clutching the child tighter. His flashlight beam shook as he moved, snow crunching under his boots. The dog barked sharply, as if warning whatever lurked in the trees. The humming sound grew louder, closer, until it seemed to circle them. The man's breath quickened. He could not see anything, but he felt eyes on him, watching, moving. Shadows shifted in the corner of his vision, gone the moment he turned. He forced his legs to move faster, heading back toward the cabin. The child pressed its face into his chest, shivering violently. Its small hands clutched the coat like it was holding on for life. The dog darted ahead, then stopped suddenly, barking into the darkness. The man raised the flashlight, the beam cutting through the snowstorm. For a moment, he thought he saw a shape stall, thin, too still to be human standing between the trees. But when the wind blew harder, the shapes vanished like smoke. "Keep moving," he whispered to himself, voice tight. "Don't stop." Each step back to the cabin felt like a lifetime. The forest closed in around them, heavy and suffocating. The humming sound faded, but the silence that replaced it was worse. It felt like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. At last, the cabin came into view, its roof buried under snow, the faint orange glow of the fire still shining through the window. Relief washed over him, but it lasted only a second. Behind him, in the forest, the sound returned. Louder this time. The humming rose into a sharp electric buzz, followed by a crackling noise like fire snapping in the distance. The dog barked furiously, turning back toward the woods. The man hurried inside, slamming the door shut. He laid the child gently near the fireplace, its shivering body huddled deep inside the coat. He threw more wood on the fire, watching the flames leap higher, casting long shadows across the walls. For a few minutes, the cabin felt safe. The warmth returned to the room, and the child's trembling slowed. Its big glowing eyes blinked open again, staring at him, soft but full of fear. Then came the sound closer than ever. A strange thump against the cabin wall. Snow falling from the roof, or something heavier. The dog barked at the door, hackles raised. The man grabbed his shotgun from above the mantel. He had not used it in years, but tonight might be different. His hands tightened around the cold metal. He looked at the child. It met his gaze with desperate eyes, whispering again in its strange, broken tongue. Only one word reached his ears, clear and chilling: hunters. The man's stomach dropped. He glanced at the door, at the windows, at the shadows dancing across the walls. The dog barked again, sharper, angrier, ready for a fight. And then, just beyond the window, a flash of white light streaked through the trees. The flash of light outside the window burned into the man's eyes, bright against the endless black forest. For a moment, he stood still, his shotgun raised, heart thundering in his chest. His dog barked wildly, scratching at the door, ready to tear into whatever was out there. The child pressed deeper into the coat, curling near the fire, glowing eyes wide with terror. The man swallowed hard, sweat mixing with the chill on his skin. He stepped slowly toward the window, careful not to make a sound. The cabin walls felt too thin, too fragile, against whatever hunted outside. He parted the curtain with the edge of his shotgun and peered out. The snow was falling thick, swirling in the storm. At first, he saw nothing but white. Then, a shadow moved. Tall, lean, wrong, not human. Its shape stretched long under the moonlight, and when it shifted, another shadow moved beside it. And another. The man's throat tightened. There were more than one. The dog growled low, teeth bared. The man backed away from the window, heart racing faster than his legs could carry. He turned to the child. "Who are they?" he whispered, voice sharp with fear. The child's lips trembled. It spoke again in its broken tongue, the words spilling fast, desperate. Only one word the man understood: hunters. The man felt his stomach drop. Hunters. That meant these creatures were not just strangers. They were after the child. And they had tracked it all the way to him. The first blow came suddenly. A heavy slam against the cabin wall that rattled the wood. The dog spun, barking furiously, as another thud struck the roof. Snow fell down in heavy sheets, sliding off the edges. The man raised the shotgun. Breathing hard, the hunters were circling. Testing, waiting for the right moment. The child whimpered, its small hands clutching the coat tighter, glowing eyes filled with tears. The man forced himself to think. He could not stay inside forever. The cabin was old. If they broke through the door or smashed the roof, he would be trapped. He needed a way out, and fast. Another flash of light burst through the window, searing the inside of the cabin. It wasn't fire. It wasn't lightning. It was something else, something that hummed like electricity, sharp and alive. The dog yelped, hiding behind the man for the first time. The man's breath quickened. He ran to the child, scooping it into his arms again. Its body was still ice cold, despite the fire. He grabbed his backpack, shoved in food, water, a blanket, and slung it over his shoulder. The shotgun stayed in his other hand. The door rattled, shaking under heavy blows. The wood cracked at the edges. The man cursed under his breath. He had no choice. Staying would mean death. He nodded to his dog. "Come." He kicked the back door open. The night swallowed them instantly, snow blasting against his face. He stumbled forward, clutching the child close. The dog ran ahead, barking into the storm, clearing the way. Behind them, the cabin groaned. Another flash of white light lit up the night, followed by a crash. The man didn't dare look back. He pushed forward into the forest, boots crunching in the snow. Breath coming in short bursts. The humming sound grew louder, following them. It rose and fell, closer, then farther. As though the hunters were gliding between the trees, faster than human eyes could track. The man's skin crawled. He could feel them watching. The child suddenly raised its head, glowing eyes staring into the darkness behind them. Its lips moved, whispering a word the man could not understand, over and over. Then, in a small, broken voice, it said, "Hide." He nodded, forcing his legs to move faster. They stumbled through the woods, the storm covering their tracks, until at last he spotted a dip in the ground. A hollow beneath a fallen tree big enough to crawl into. He slid inside, pulling the dog and the child with him, crouching low. Holding his breath, the forest went still. The humming sound grew louder. Shadows passed by, tall and thin, glowing faintly in the snowstorm. Their footsteps made no sound. They stopped near the tree. So close, the man could see the light flickering across their strange shapes. His heart pounded, so loudly he was sure they could hear it. The dog trembled against his leg, silent now, its ears pinned back. The child pressed its face into his chest, small hands clutching the coat. One of the hunters paused. It turned slowly, its head door, what looked like its head tilting, listening. The man's breath caught. For a moment, time froze. Then the hunter moved on. The others followed, the humming fading as they disappeared into the storm. The man didn't move, didn't breathe, until the forest was silent again. Only then did he let out the breath he had been holding. His chest ached, his hands shook, but they were alive. For now, he looked down at the child, who stared up at him with glowing eyes full of fear and something else. Trust. The man knew one thing. the hunters weren't finished. They would come again. And when they did, he would have to be ready. The storm raged on, but deep inside, he felt something colder than snow settle over him. This was only the beginning. The man returned to the cabin before dawn, moving carefully through the storm. The hollow beneath a fallen tree had saved them for the night. But he knew it was only a matter of time before the hunters came again. His dog padded silently beside him, ears twitching at every sound. The child lay limp in his arms, weak and trembling, wrapped in the heavy coat. When the cabin came into view, half buried under snow, relief touched him for only a second. The roof sagged from the hunter's blows. The front window was cracked. Black scorch marks burned into the wood around the frame. His safe place was no longer safe, but he had nowhere else to go. He carried the child inside and set it near the fire. The flames had died down during the night, and the air inside was cold. He added wood, sparks leaping, heat slowly filling the room. The dog curled close to the child, warming it with its fur. The alien child's eyes fluttered open, glowing faintly in the dim light. It whispered something in its strange tongue, then reached out a trembling hand to touch the dog again. The man watched in silence. A deep thud outside snapped his attention to the door. His heart clenched. They were back. The dog stood at once, fur bristling, barking sharp and angry. The man grabbed his shotgun from the table, his hands tight around the wood and steel. He moved toward the window, peering through the crack in the curtain. At first, all he saw was snow and darkness. Then, a faint light moved between the trees. Another appeared beside it. Then another. 3 glowing shapes, tall and thin, circling like wolves in the night. The hunters. The man's breath came heavy. He turned to the child. "They're here," he whispered, though he knew it could not understand. The child only stared back, glowing eyes full of fear. The first blow hit the door like thunder. The wood groaned under the weight. The dog snarled, teeth flashing. The man raised his shotgun and aimed at the door, but his hands shook. He had not fired it in years. He had hunted deer, yes, but never fought creatures like these. Another slam rocked the cabin, rattling dishes from the shelves. A strange humming began, rising in pitch until the windows buzzed with vibration. The child whimpered, curling tighter into the coat. The man's chest tightened. If they broke through, the cabin would be torn apart in seconds. He had to make a choice: stand and fight, or flee again into the storm. But the storm was still raging, and the child was too weak to run. The hunters knew this. They were waiting to break him down. The door cracked, splinters flying into the room. A long, thin hand pushed through, clawed fingers glowing faintly. The dog lunged, snapping its jaws at the opening, barking with fury. The man fired. The shotgun boomed, deafening in the small cabin. The blast ripped through the door, sending the clawed hand jerking back into the night. A high-pitched screech echoed outside, not human, not animal, but sharp enough to pierce his skull. The man stumbled back, ears ringing. For a moment, silence returned. He reloaded quickly, breath shaking. The dog stood stiff, growling at the door. The child's eyes glowed brighter, fixed on him, as if pleading for him not to give up. Then, all at once, the roof shook. Snow crashed down inside as something heavy landed on top. The cabin groaned, timbers bending. A glowing claw ripped through the ceiling, tearing wood like paper. Cold air rushed in. The man spun, firing again. The blast hit the ceiling, wood splintering, sparks flying. The claw disappeared, but the humming outside grew louder, angry. They were surrounding him from every side. The man dropped to his knees beside the child, pulling it close. His dog pressed against them, a shield of fur and muscle. He whispered through gritted teeth, I won't let them take you. The child raised a weak hand, touched his chest, and whispered one word. Run. But where? There was no place left to run. The hunters had them trapped. The window exploded inward, shards of glass scattering across the floor. A long shape pushed through, tall and glowing eyes like burning coals. It hissed, the sound twisting in the man's skull. The dog leaped, teeth sinking into the creature's arm. The hunter screeched, jerking sideways, slamming into the wall. The man fired again, the blast filling the cabin with smoke. The hunter staggered back, leaving a smear of glowing liquid on the floor. The others roared outside, their voices shaking the walls. The man's chest heaved. He was outnumbered, outmatched, but something inside him hardened. He would not let them win. He would not let them take the child. He kicked over the lantern on the table. Flames leaped up, racing across the spilled oil. The hunters wanted a fight. He would give them fire. The child's glowing eyes widened in shock as the flames spread, lighting the cabin like a furnace. The man lifted the child in one arm, shotgun in the other, and shouted to his dog. Out the back. The dog barked once, then darted toward the broken door. The man followed, fire chasing his heels, smoke burning his lungs. Behind him, the hunters screamed, their voices like knives in the dark dot as he burst into the storm, clutching the child against his chest. He heard the cabin crack, timbers breaking, fire roaring higher. His only home was gone, but so was his fear now. It was war. The man ran through the storm. The freezing child clutched tight against his chest, the dog racing at his side. Behind them, the cabin burned, flames licking through the roof, black smoke twisting into the night sky. Sparks rose into the falling snow, glowing like dying stars before vanishing into the wind. The fire roared, a beacon in the forest, and he knew the hunters would see it. They would come. His boots crunched deep into the snow, legs aching with every step. The storm cut at his face, icy wind stealing his breath. But he didn't slow down. He could not stop. If he stopped, they were dead. The child stirred weakly in his arms, glowing eyes half closed. Its lips moved, whispering in its broken language. The words came soft, urgent, but he could not understand. He only heard the fear in its voice. When it coughed, a faint shimmer of blue light slipped from its mouth, fading into the snow. The man's grip tightened. Whatever this child was, it was dying. The dog barked once, sharp and loud, pulling his eyes forward. Shapes moved in the storm, shadows slipping between the trees. The humming sound returned, rising and falling, closer each second. They were following. They were hunting. The man cursed under his breath. He changed direction, forcing his way uphill toward thicker trees. The forest grew denser, branches heavy with snow, pressing in close. Maybe, just maybe, the hunters would be slowed. But the shadows kept coming, gliding too smoothly, too fast. Not hindered by the storm, the man's chest burned, breath fogging in front of him. His muscles screamed, but he pushed harder. He could not think about himself. He could only think about the child in his arms and the dog at his side. A sound cracked through the storm. A sharp blast, like lightning splitting the sky. The ground shook under his boots. He spun, flashlight beam trembling through the snow. Behind him, a tree toppled, crashing to the ground. The hunters were firing at him, tearing the forest apart. The dog barked wildly, urging him forward. Another flash lit the trees, scorching snow into steam. Heat licked his face even through the cold. He stumbled, almost fell, but held on. He had to keep moving. At last, the hill dipped down into a valley. He slid halfway down, snow spilling into his boots, the child clinging tighter to his coat. His dog bounded beside him, steady even in the chaos. They reached the bottom, where rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth. He ducked behind one, chest heaving, trying to catch his breath. For a moment, there was silence, only the howl of the wind. Then the child stirred. Its trembling hands pulled something from inside its torn cloth. The man's eyes widened. It was a crystal small, glowing faintly, pulsing with a strange light. The glow reflected in the child's eyes, soft and sad. "What is that?" the man whispered, though he knew the child could not answer. The child cradled it like it was precious, whispering again in that strange tongue. Then, with effort, it spoke one word he could understand. "Reason?" The man's blood chilled. Reason. This was why the hunters came. They wanted the crystal. The child had stolen it, or maybe escaped with it. And now they would never stop until they had it back. The dog whined, ears turning toward the forest. The humming was louder now, vibrating through the ground, through the man's chest. He looked up and saw them shadows moving along the ridge, glowing faintly, searching the valley. He tucked the crystal back into the child's coat and tightened his grip. He could not let it fall into their hands. He did not know what power it carried, but if the hunters wanted it so badly, it could not be anything good. The dog barked sharply, and a flash of light seared past the rock, scorching it black. Snow hissed into steam where it struck. The hunters had found them. The man gritted his teeth. He scooped the child close and ran again, weaving between the jagged rocks. Shots followed, cracking through the air, each one too close. The dog stayed ahead, dodging left and right, never slowing. His legs ached. His chest felt like fire, but he kept running. The storm raged around them, covering their trail, but the hunters were faster. Too fast. He could hear them now, their voices sharp and metallic, echoing through the valley. The man's heart pounded. He could not outrun them forever. He needed to hide. He needed shelter. He scanned the valley desperately, his eyes catching on a dark shape at the far end. A cave. His hope surged. He pushed harder, nearly slipping on the ice, but forced himself forward. The cave was close now, just a little farther. Behind him, the hunters' humming grew louder, their glowing shapes cutting through the storm. The dog reached the cave first, barking furiously inside, as if warning away unseen dangers. The man stumbled in after it, falling to his knees on the frozen stone floor. His breath tore from his chest, white clouds in the dark. The child lay limp in his arms, crystal pressed tight against its chest. For a moment, the cave was quiet. Only the sound of the storm outside filled the air. The man slumped against the wall, his dog standing guard at the entrance, growling low, but he knew it wasn't over. The hunters were coming. They would not stop. The man tightened his hold on the child, staring into the darkness of the cave. Whatever the crystal was, whatever the child carried, it was the key to everything, and tonight it might cost him his life. The cave was dark and cold, but at least it gave them a moment of safety. The man sat with his back against the stone wall, the alien child resting weakly in his arms. His dog stood at the entrance, growling low, every muscle tense, watching the storm outside. The hunters' humming voices still carried through the wind, faint but steady, like wolves howling as they closed in on their prey. The man's chest heaved. His legs burned from running, but he forced himself to stay alert. He listened to the storm, to the sounds of the hunters, to the faint crackling of energy in the distance. They were out there, searching. They would not give up. The child stirred. Slowly, it pulled the small, glowing crystal from beneath the coat. Its light filled the cave with a soft blue glow, painting the stone walls with shadows. The man stared at it, his breath catching. It was beautiful, yet dangerous. He could feel it, like heat against his skin, even though he wasn't touching it. The child cradled the crystal in both hands, whispering softly in its strange language. The words were low, almost like a prayer. Then, with effort, it lifted its glowing eyes to meet his dot. The man shook his head. "What is it? Why are they after you?" He knew it was useless to ask, but he couldn't stop himself. The child blinked slowly, as if searching for the right words. Then, in broken English, it whispered, "Power. Heal. Destroy." The man's stomach dropped. Heal. Destroy. He stared at the crystal again, realizing it wasn't just a stone. It was something greater. Something alive. The child pressed it to its chest, shivering. Tears formed in its bright eyes. "They want control," it whispered, each word heavy with fear. The man rubbed a hand down his face, struggling to make sense of it. So the hunters were after this crystal, and the child had run away with it. Maybe to protect it. Maybe because it was stolen. He didn't know. But one thing was clear. If the hunters got it, nothing good would follow. The dog whined, turning its head toward the entrance. The man froze. The humming sound was closer now. The shadows of the hunters flickered faintly against the snow outside. He gripped his shotgun tighter, his palms slick with sweat. The child leaned forward suddenly, placing the crystal in his hands. The glow burned through his gloves, making his skin prickle. He almost dropped it, but the child shook its head, forcing him to hold on. "Trust. Human," the child whispered weakly. The man's chest tightened. He stared at the glowing crystal in disbelief. It pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. For a moment, warmth spread through his arms, driving away the chill. Then, just as quickly, a cold shiver ran down his spine. This thing could heal, or destroy. And now it was in his hands. The hunters' voices grew louder outside, sharp and metallic, echoing across the valley. A flash of light lit the entrance of the cave. Snow hissed into steam where it struck. The dog barked furiously, leaping forward, teeth bared. The man shoved the crystal back into the child's coat and lifted it into his arms. He had no time to think. The hunters were here. A shadow filled the entrance, tall, thin, glowing faintly in the storm. Its head tilted slowly, eyes burning like hot coals. It stepped inside, each movement smooth, predatory. Behind it, more shapes shifted in the snow. The man raised his shotgun, aiming at the first one. His dog snarled, ready to leap. The child clung to his coat, whispering broken words, terrified. The hunter hissed, a sharp metallic sound that cut through the cave. Its long arm lifted, a weapon glowing in its clawed hand. Energy hummed, rising in pitch, filling the air. The man fired. The shotgun roared, the blast echoing through the cave. The hunter staggered, its glowing chest shattering in sparks of blue light. But another stepped into its place immediately, tall and silent, weapon humming. The man's heart pounded. There were too many. He could fight, but not win. Not here. The child reached for the crystal again, pulling it from its coat. Its small hands trembled, but its glowing eyes burned with sudden determination. It whispered a word over and over, a word the man couldn't understand. The crystal pulsed brighter, filling the cave with light. The hunters hissed, stepping back. The hum of their weapons faltered. The man shielded his eyes from the glow, heat rushing against his skin. Then the child's weak voice cut through the storm. One word spoken clear enough for him to understand: choice. The light flared, blinding, forcing the hunters out of the cave. The man staggered back, holding the child close, the dog pressing against his leg. The air vibrated with power, stone trembling around them. When the light faded, the hunters were gone. The cave was silent again, only the storm howling outside. The man stared at the child, who lay limp, drained from the effort. The crystal dimmed, faintly glowing in its small hand. He realized then that this wasn't just a fight for survival. This was bigger. The crystal wasn't only a weapon or a tool. It was a decision. A choice between healing or destroying. Between mercy and war. And somehow he had been dragged into it. The dog whimpered, pressing against him, waiting. The man tightened his arms around the child, his eyes narrowing at the cave entrance. The hunters would return. And next time, there would be no hiding. The cave was silent after the blast of light, but the man knew it would not last. The hunters had retreated, but not because they were afraid. They would return, stronger, angrier, unwilling to leave without the crystal or the child. He could feel it in his bones. The storm outside was only a mask. The real storm was coming for him. The child lay in his arms, pale and weak, the crystal dimming in its small hand. Its glowing eyes flickered open, staring at him with quiet trust. The dog pressed close to his leg, ears twitching, body tense, waiting for the next attack. The man's chest was heavy, but his mind was sharp now. He could no longer run. He had been running since the first night. And every step only brought the hunters closer. He looked at the child, then at the crystal. The word it had spoken echoed in his mind. Choice. He had no idea why an alien child would trust him. A simple man in a broken cabin with nothing but an old shotgun. But it had chosen him. The crystal had chosen him. And now the hunters would force him to make a decision. The ground shook. A low hum grew outside the cave, louder and sharper than before. The dog growled fiercely, hackles rising. The man stood, holding the child close with one arm, gripping the shotgun with the other. His heart raced, but his steps were steady. He walked toward the cave entrance, where the storm whipped snow across the valley. Shapes emerged, not one, not three. Dozens, tall, thin, glowing figures sliding across the snow like shadows come alive. Their eyes burned red in the darkness, weapons humming with deadly light. The hunters had come in full force. The man's breath caught, but he didn't back away. He set the child down gently on the cave floor, wrapped tightly in the coat. The crystal pulsed faintly in its small hands, waiting. The man crouched, looked into its glowing eyes, and whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what." The child whispered back, broken and weak, "Trust." Human. The hunters advanced. Their weapons lifted as one, glowing brighter. The storm howled around them, carrying their strange voices, metallic and sharp. The man raised his shotgun. His dog barked furiously, leaping forward, ready to defend its master. The first hunter fired. A beam of light seared past his head, blasting a hole into the rock wall. Heat scorched his skin. He fired back, the shotgun booming, striking one of the tall figures square in the chest. It staggered, screeched, then fell. Sparks bursting from its body, but the others kept coming. The dog leaped onto another, teeth sinking into its glowing limb. The hunter roared, trying to shake it off, but the dog held tight, refusing to let go. The man reloaded, fired again, and the second hunter fell. But there were too many. Energy blasts lit the cave entrance, stone shattering, snow exploding into steam. The man ducked behind a rock, breath ragged, heart hammering. He couldn't fight them all. Not with bullets. Not with flesh and bone. The crystal pulsed brighter. The child sat up weakly, holding it with trembling hands. Its eyes locked onto his, glowing with determination. It whispered one word, clear and sharp this time. Now, the man hesitated. He had seen what the crystal could do, light strong enough to drive the hunters back. But the child had warned him. It could heal, or it could destroy. If he used it wrong, he could doom them all. The hunters closed in, their weapons aimed. The dog wind, bleeding from a cut along its side, but still standing strong. The man clenched his jaw. He made his choice. He ran to the child, scooped its small hands into his, and wrapped his rough fingers around the glowing crystal. Heat surged through him instantly, burning, freezing, filling every vein in his body. His vision blurred. The cave vanished. For a moment, he stood in endless light, voices echoing in his head, fear, anger, sorrow, hope. The crystal was alive. It was asking him what he wanted. He thought of the hunters, their endless hunger for control. He thought of the child, fragile and lost, yet brave enough to trust him. He thought of his dog, loyal and fearless, who would die without hesitation for him. And he thought of himself, a man who had once chosen loneliness, but who could no longer look away. "I want to protect," he whispered. "I want to save," the crystal answered. Light burst from his hands, brighter than fire, brighter than the sun. It filled the cave, the valley, the storm itself. The hunters screamed, their glowing bodies staggering back, blinded, broken by the force. Weapons shattered. Shadows scattered. One by one, they vanished into the snow, fleeing into the night. The cave shook with the echo of their retreat. Then silence fell. Only the storm remained. The man collapsed to his knees, the crystal dimming in his hand. The child leaned against him, eyes glowing with quiet relief. The dog limped over, pressing its head against his arm, tail wagging weakly. They had survived. For now, the man stared into the storm, chest heaving, the crystal pulsing faintly in his hand. The hunters would return. The child's people would come looking. And the world, his quiet, lonely world, would never be the same again. But as he looked down at the child, who smiled faintly through its weakness, and at his loyal dog, who stood proud even in pain, he felt something new stir in his chest. Not fear, hope. He tightened his grip on the crystal. This was not just survival anymore. This was a choice. And tonight, he had chosen humanity.